The crystal glasses clinked as Richard Morrison raised his hand for attention. 200 employees of Morrison Technologies fell silent, all eyes turning to their CEO, my father-in-law, as he prepared to make his annual holiday speech. I stood near the back of the ballroom, already knowing what was coming. After 5 years as chief financial officer, I'd learned to read the signs. The way Richard's secretary had been copying personnel files. The whispered meetings with the board. The way my wife Kate had been distant for weeks, avoiding my questions about work. As we celebrate another record year, Richard began, his voice carrying that artificial warmth he used for public speaking, we must also address some unfortunate business. His eyes found me in the crowd. It's my sad duty to announce that our CFO, James Chin, is leaving the company effective immediately. The room erupted in murmurs. I kept my face neutral, even as I felt dozens of eyes turn my way. A routine audit has revealed concerning irregularities, Richard continued. While we complete our investigation, we feel it's best for all parties if Mr. Chin steps down. Security will escort him to clear out his office on Monday. My phone buzzed, a text from Kate. My father's right. Don't make a scene. 5 years of marriage, 15 years of friendship, and she couldn't even face me in person. But then Kate had always chosen her father's side in any conflict. I just never expected to be on the receiving end of their combined betrayal. If only they knew what I discovered 3 months ago. It had started with a discrepancy in the international wire transfers, tiny irregularities that most people would miss. But I'd built my career on attention to detail, on seeing patterns in the numbers that others overlooked. Small amounts always under reporting thresholds, flowing through a maze of shell companies. All leading to a series of accounts in Singapore held by offshore corporations that, when traced carefully enough, led right back to Richard Morrison. 15 years of systematic fraud, totaling over $300 million in embezzled funds. And now he was trying to set me up to take the fall. I lifted my glass in a mock toast, catching Richard's eye. His confident smile faltered slightly at my calm demeanor. He'd expected anger, protests, maybe even a scene. Instead, he got only a slight smile that seemed to make him deeply uncomfortable. James. A hand touched my arm. Linda Martinez, our head of compliance, stood beside me. Her eyes held a mixture of concern and something else. Knowledge. Not here, I said quietly. Meet me at the usual place in an hour. She nodded almost imperceptibly and drifted away. Linda had been my ally in this investigation from the start, ever since I'd first noticed the suspicious patterns. As head of compliance, she'd helped me document everything while maintaining perfect deniability. I made my way toward the exit, accepting condolences from confused colleagues with quiet dignity. Near the door, I passed Kate standing with her father. She wouldn't meet my eyes. Nothing to say, James? Richard called after me, unable to resist one more jab. I turned slowly. Actually, yes. You might want to enjoy that champagne, Richard. I have a feeling it's the last celebration you'll be having for quite a while. His face reddened. Is that a threat? Just an observation, I replied mildly. Numbers don't lie, Richard. Even when people do. I left him puzzling over those words, knowing they'd keep him up all night. Good. Let him wonder exactly what I knew. An hour later, I sat in a quiet booth at O'Malley's bar with Linda and another guest, FBI Special Agent Sarah Cooper. Everything's ready for Monday, Sarah said, sliding a file across the table. The warrant came through this afternoon. We'll hit all 3 offices simultaneously. I reviewed the documents, noting how much evidence they'd assembled beyond what I'd initially discovered. He's been doing this for 15 years? Sarah nodded. The Singapore accounts were just the start. We've uncovered similar operations in the Cayman Islands and Luxembourg. Your father-in-law has been running quite an operation. Ex-father-in-law soon enough, I corrected, thinking of Kate's text. Though I suppose I should thank him. If he hadn't been so eager to get rid of me, I might never have looked closely enough at those transfers. Linda sipped her whiskey. What I don't understand is why now. The company's more profitable than ever. Why risk exposing everything just to frame you? Because of the merger, I explained. Morrison Tech is about to acquire Valley Systems. During due diligence, external auditors would have found his backdoor. He needed a scapegoat before that happened. And you were the perfect target, Sarah added. The outsider who married the boss's daughter. Everyone would believe you were just trying to get rich quick. I thought about the day Richard had offered me the CFO position. I'd been dating Kate for 10 years at that point, working my way up through other companies. The offer had seemed like a dream, a chance to join the family business, to finally earn Richard's respect. What about Kate? Linda asked softly. Do you think she knows? No. Of this, at least I was certain. Kate's brilliant at marketing, but she never looked too closely at the financial side. She trusted her father completely. I smiled sadly. Still does, apparently. My phone buzzed again. Another text from Kate. Dad's furious about what you said. What did you mean about the numbers? I showed it to Sarah. Should I respond? She shook her head. Radio silence until Monday. We don't want to risk tipping him off. I thought about the morning 3 months ago when I'd first spotted the irregularities. I'd almost gone straight to Richard thinking it must be a mistake. But something, intuition maybe or just self-preservation, had made me dig deeper first. One more thing, Sarah said, pulling out another document. We've frozen his personal accounts, but there are probably others we haven't found. If he suspects anything over the weekend, he'll run, Linda finished. 15 years of hidden money, multiple passports. He won't run, I said confidently. Richard's too proud, too convinced of his own invulnerability. He thinks he's already won. The loyal daughter by his side, the troublesome son-in-law disposed of, all loose ends tied up neat and clean. I looked at the evidence spread across the table, 15 years of fraud documented in meticulous detail. He never understood that in finance the truth always hides in the numbers. And I'm very, very good with numbers. As if to punctuate my words, my phone buzzed one final time. A company-wide email from Richard. Regarding recent events, I want to assure everyone that Morrison Technologies remains strong. Monday will be business as usual. I smiled, thinking about just how wrong that last statement would prove to be. Business as usual, I repeated softly. Until it isn't. Linda raised her glass. To Monday then. To Monday, Sarah and I echoed, though I wasn't celebrating. Despite everything, I took no joy in what was coming. But sometimes doing the right thing means being willing to burn every bridge behind you. I looked at my wedding ring, thinking about Kate's silence at the party. About 15 years of friendship and 5 years of marriage, all sacrificed to her father's greed and pride. Monday would change everything. I just hoped we were all ready for what those changes would bring. I watched Monday morning unfold through the FBI's surveillance feed, set up in a command center 2 blocks from Morrison Technologies headquarters. Multiple screens showed different angles of the building, including Richard's corner office on the top floor. Target is on site, Sarah reported, watching Richard stride through the lobby at precisely 7:30 a.m. Always punctual, always in control. All teams in position. I checked my watch. In 15 minutes, Richard would begin his Monday executive meeting, where he planned to officially announce my termination and install his nephew as interim CFO. Everyone would be gathered in one place, making the FBI's job easier. Multiple vehicles approaching, someone called out. On the screens, we watched black SUVs converge on the building from different directions. Execute, Sarah commanded into her radio. The next few minutes were organized chaos. FBI agents swarmed the building while local police secured the perimeter. Employee badges were immediately deactivated, trapping everyone inside while agents moved floor by floor. Through it all, I watched Richard's office. He stood at his window watching the FBI vehicles arrive. Even from this distance, I could read his body language. The moment of confusion followed by dawning realization followed by panic. He's moving, an agent reported. Target is accessing his computer. All units converge on the executive floor, Sarah ordered. Do not let him delete any files. But Richard wasn't trying to delete files. Instead, he pulled up a messaging system I'd never seen before and typed rapidly. Sending instructions to his overseas accounts, no doubt. Too late, Richard, I murmured. Those accounts were frozen days ago. The door to his office burst open. Agents poured in, weapons drawn. Richard raised his hands slowly, his face a mask of cold fury. Richard Morrison. Sarah's voice came through clearly as she entered the office. You're under arrest for fraud, embezzlement, money laundering, and tax evasion. As they let him out in handcuffs, The other screens showed similar scenes playing out across the building. Teams of forensic accountants were already setting up in the conference rooms, armed with the evidence I'd helped compile. James. Linda appeared beside me, her face grim. Kate just arrived. I switched to the lobby feed. My wife stood just inside the entrance, watching in shock as FBI agents escorted her father through the lobby in handcuffs. When Richard saw her, he called out something, but the audio was too faint to catch. Should I go down there? I asked, half to myself. Sarah touched my shoulder. Give her time. This is a lot to process. The next few hours were a blur of activity. The FBI interviewed executives, seized computers, and secured documents. The company's stock was temporarily suspended from trading. News vans gathered outside, reporting on the dramatic downfall of one of the city's most prominent business leaders. Around noon, my phone rang, Kate's number. After 3 months of planning this moment, I wasn't prepared for how much her call would affect me. Is it true? She asked without preamble. Everything they're saying about Dad? Yes, I replied simply. I discovered it 3 months ago. That's why he was trying to frame me. Silence stretched between us. Why didn't you tell me? Would you have believed me over him? Her sharp intake of breath told me I'd hit home. I thought, when Dad said you were stealing, you believed him without question, I finished. Just like you always have. James, I'm so sorry. Her voice cracked. I should have. Ms. Morrison? I heard someone interrupt in the background. The FBI needs to speak with you now. I have to go, Kate said quickly. But James, can we talk later? I ended the call without answering. 15 years of friendship, 5 years of marriage, and she hadn't even asked for my side of the story before standing with her father. By evening, the full scope of Richard's crimes was becoming clear. Over $300 million embezzled through a complex network of offshore accounts. Dozens of shell companies. Multiple passports and hidden properties around the world. The board's called an emergency meeting, Linda reported. They want you there. I found the board members in the main conference room looking shell-shocked. Many had been Richard's friends for decades. Mr. Chin, the chairman began, in light of today's events, we owe you an apology. And, we'd like to offer you the position of CO. I looked around the room, remembering all the times I'd sat here while these same people nodded along with Richard's decisions. None had questioned him when he announced my termination. Thank you, but no, I replied. I'm starting my own consulting firm, specializing in fraud detection and prevention. In fact, I've already been retained by several of your major shareholders to review Morrison Technologies' books going back 20 years. Their faces paled. They'd all been on the board for most of that time, failing in their oversight duties. We're willing to make a very generous offer, another board member tried. It's not about money, I said. It's about integrity. Something this company lost long before I got here. As I left the building that night, I passed my old office. Security had finished examining it, leaving behind the box of personal items I'd planned to collect before Richard's announcement changed everything. Inside, I found the photo from my first day as CFO, Richard shaking my hand, Kate beaming beside us. We'd all looked so happy, so full of promise. My phone buzzed. A text from Kate. I'm at home. Please come talk to me. Home. The word felt hollow now. But I went anyway one last time. I found her sitting in our darkened living room, surrounded by financial documents, printouts of everything the FBI had seized, which she'd obviously been studying for hours. I didn't know, she said as I entered. All these years I never knew. You didn't want to know, I corrected gently. Your father was your hero. It was easier to believe I was guilty than to question him. Can you ever forgive me? I sat down across from her. Kate, your father didn't just steal money. He betrayed everyone who trusted him, employees, shareholders, you. When I found out, I had a choice. Stay quiet and be complicit, or do the right thing and lose everything. Not everything, she whispered. We could start over. But we both knew it wasn't true. The trust was broken, not just by her father's crimes but by her instant assumption of my guilt. I'll have my lawyer send the divorce papers, I said, standing up. The house is yours. I've already moved out. Where will you go? My new office opens next week. It turns out there's huge demand for forensic accounting after what happened at Morrison Technologies. Several other companies want their books reviewed just in case. She managed a weak smile. You always were brilliant with numbers. Numbers don't lie, I said. People do. As I left our home for the last time, I thought about Richard sitting in his jail cell, probably still convinced he was the victim. About Kate finally seeing her father clearly for the first time. About all the lives changed by one man's greed. My phone buzzed, Sarah sending the final arrest numbers. 12 executives charged, including Richard's nephew who'd been helping him move money offshore. The company's stock would resume trading tomorrow under new leadership. Life would go on. Morrison Technologies would survive, hopefully with better oversight. Kate would rebuild her life without her father's shadow looming over every decision. Me. I had a new company to build, focused on preventing others from doing what Richard had done. Sometimes the greatest victory isn't in revenge, but in simply bringing truth to light. The numbers had told the story. I just made sure everyone finally heard it. A week later, I sat in my new office, reviewing applications for my growing firm. One resume caught my eye, a brilliant young accountant, recently graduated. Her last name was Morrison. I looked at the attached photo. Kate's younger cousin Rachel, who'd always been the family rebel, questioning Richard's authority. She'd earned her CPA while working full-time at a shelter for abused women. I picked up the phone to schedule an interview. After all, people shouldn't be judged by their family's sins. Sometimes the greatest changes come from those who've seen corruption up close and chosen a different path. The headlines had already moved on to new scandals, new stories. But the lesson remained. In the world of finance, the truth always hides in the numbers. You just have to be willing to look deep enough and brave enough to act on what you find. Richard's sentencing was scheduled for next month. Kate had asked if I would attend. I hadn't decided yet. Some chapters need to close quietly without an audience. Instead, I focused on building something new from the ashes of what was lost. My firm's motto displayed prominently in our lobby: truth lives in the numbers. It wasn't the life I'd planned, standing beside that photo on my first day as CFO. But sometimes the greatest opportunities come disguised as betrayals. And the truest strength lies in being willing to stand alone for what's right. The numbers had told their story. Now it was time to write a new one honest ledger at a time.